Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for joining our webinar today, where we're going to be going over Revit and Civil 3D workflows. Now, before we get going, just a couple of quick things. Everyone's going to be on mute for the duration of the webinar, but I'm going to be keeping an eye on the questions and the chat window. So if you have any questions, drop them in there. And if I'm not able to answer it during the process of the presentation, I'll make sure I answer it at the very end during the Q&A. Now, if you're not familiar about us, MicroDesk is an AECO industry consulting firm. We've been around since '94. We have 12 locations across the US, and we're going international. We have one in the UK. And our technical team is over 180 people. That's just the technical staff, not sales. And we have backgrounds from the industry. I worked in architecture for over 10 years. Jackie's been an engineer. And all of our team really comes from an actual working background. We know how things are actually done in the field as opposed to just through a book. And a lot of the things that we do with our clients, we help out with building information modeling, meaning we can actually, staff augmentation, we can create content, we can help review content. We work on assessments and enterprise level reviews. We can also have an application development team on staff, so we have the ability to write code and customize existing code where needed. Now, today's presentation is going to be given by two people, one of which is myself, Peter Marchese, the Senior Technology Evangelist at MicroDesk. My background is in architecture, but my focus over the last few years has been more on emerging technologies like the VR, AR, UAVs, a lot of the cloud services like BIM 360. And presenting with me today is Jacquelyn Brown.
Hi, everybody. You can call me Jackie. I'm also experienced with emerging technologies and BIM processes. I'm more on the civil side of things, so I have 13 years of civil and infrastructure experience and just knowledge in AutoCAD, Civil 3D, InfoWorks, and things like that.
So got a great team today for you today. So what we're going to be going over, let's see if I can get this, there we go, is we're going to touch on some of the existing workflows between Civil 3D and Revit, just to sort of lay a base, and then we're going to be talking about the latest one that came out over the last couple of months with some of the updates that Autodesk put out. And then at the end we'll have some Q&A and go over anything that people were curious about that we didn't touch on, or elaborate on things that we did. Now before we get rolling, I did have a few questions that I actually wanted to ask the audience. So a couple of quick polls. Make my marketing team happy. So first one, are you a designer, engineer, do you work in construction, are you a PM or principal or other? So just looking for what is your role in the AECO process. Awesome, thank you very much everybody. Good mix of crew. Okay. So the next one is, anybody here actually using BIM 360 at the moment? So the focus of our presentation today is on the coordination between Revit and Civil 3D, but the new tools do take advantage of BIM 360. So we'll be touching on that as well a little bit. So for everybody who is putting in no, hopefully this will answer a few questions that you might have on it. Okay. And then the last one, and then we'll get rolling. How do you currently coordinate with the designers if you're on the civil side of things? You exporting to CAD? Are you using IFC, Land XML? Yep. Yeah, the export to CAD is definitely the winner on this one, but more Land XMLs than I would have expected. This is nice to see. Alrighty, everybody, thank you very much for participating in that. Definitely appreciate the feedback. Alrighty, so let's get rolling here. So now, with regards to Revit and Civil 3D workflows, one of the things that Autodesk is focused on for a long time is trying to figure out how to make the coordination between all the different trades more efficient, effective, and fluid. The thing is, most of those workflows that have been put out were more between the architects, the engineers, and maybe even the construction parties. There's not a lot that's really made life a lot easier between the civil engineers and the architects. We've seen a little bit here and there with, say, InfraWorks, but Civil 3D to Revit has always been pretty much, what it was. Now, as Autodesk has been enhancing their workflows across everything, and they've been focusing a lot using the BIM 360 tools to help streamline this. So, and that's what we're going to be actually be looking at today, is how their new plugins, or sorry, shouldn't say plugin, new part of the program actually takes advantage of this baseline of Forge and project data to work between everybody. Now, how we got there is we have a handful of existing options, and each one has its pros and cons, and in some cases we're still going to be leveraging them. So this new workflow is focused on topo surfaces, so some of this we'll still need. But the main one, as was pointed out in the poll, is exporting out to CAD. So we would go from Civil 3D, export to CAD, bring that into Revit, and depending on if we needed a 3D topo surface, we can take that in as a link or an import and then recreate the topo from that. What we typically would find with that, though, is that as the project progresses, what would typically happen is I'd need to recreate the topography from scratch, or I would need to rebuild all of the points inside of the topo from the updated link. So it could be done, but it wasn't always the most user-friendly. Other options would be taking advantage of going to IFC. So I can take it from Civil 3D, I can go it into IFC. If I want to, I can even bring that into Navisworks, maintain all the 3D information. And then I can bring that into Revit either as an IFC file or as my coordination model. Now, the one that I was actually happy to see that some people are taking advantage of is the link, the Land XML. So if you're not familiar with it, Revit actually has a site designer ribbon that Autodesk has available for anybody on subscription. You can access that from your account management. And one of the features in there is the ability to import Land XML files. So this actually allows me to bring in that XML file and rebuild the topography. And I can update it, I can move things around. There's a lot of other features inside of that site designer ribbon that we can work with too. The one thing that you'll notice is that the line work on the left doesn't quite match up with the line work on the right. So while it brings it in, there might be some inconsistencies. So there's a lot of little things that are pros and cons. And some of the things that we look at from this workflow is, what if I need to get in my pipe networks? I'm still going to take advantage of some of these tools. And there's certain things that I can also do to bring in and share my coordinates back and forth. But a lot of these are sort of separate steps. It's not just one thing that kind of does it all. And that's really where the new benefits are going to come in. And Jackie's going to mention some of the other things that we'd have to think about when comparing them.
Okay, so this is just one of the workflows that we've had previously to bring Civil 3D into Revit, and just it's mostly focused on preparing our file in Civil 3D to get ready to be brought into Revit. So it's basically 6 steps, and this is just one workflow. There's other ones too, but we have to set our proxy graphics to 1. We have to set our surface style to show the tin lines, turn off any extraneous data, label a specific point location with a coordinate, set the visual style for realistic if we have any pipe networks we're bringing in. And then finally, when we're done with all that, we export the drawing, and from there, the Revit architect or whoever it might be will be able to pull it in. So it was a little bit tedious for us to be able to prepare the file. Now with a new workflow, a couple things that you need to know that you're going to need in order to use this workflow is you have to have the version Civil 3D 2019.1. The tool that we use is available in that version. You also need to have BIM 360 document management and the desktop connector. So it will upload the files through the desktop connector to BIM 360. So you need to have that. And then from there, the architect or the person on the Revit side needs to have Revit 2019.1. So we're going to use the tool to publish surfaces in Civil 3D. From there, it's going to go through BIM 360, and then in Revit, you're going to be able to link the topography from there. So just a little bit more about the new workflow. It's basically 3 steps, 3 pretty simple steps. And I want you to keep in mind that this is just for our surfaces and topography for now. Like Peter mentioned, if we do have any pipe networks or any other line work that we need to bring in, we're going to have to use old ways. So for now, this workflow is really just for our surfaces, but it's very, very simple to do. So it's basically 3 steps. We're going to set a coordinate system for the drawing. We're going to set a reference point, and then we're just going to publish the surface to BIM 360. So it's very, very simple and quick. I'm going to go ahead and take over here. Okay, so this is just a Civil 3D drawing. It's got one surface in it. It's also got some other line work shown in here. I do have a location where I'm going to place a building, and I do have a coordinate labeled here. You do not have to have it labeled. We're just going to be setting a reference point, so that's the reference point I'm going to use. I just happen to label it just so I know which one I want to use. So the first thing is we're going to set a coordinate system. With most drawings, you probably already have a coordinate system set, but I'm just going to go into the drawing settings, and on the Units and Zone tab, here is where you place your coordinate system. So if you know where your project is located, you're going to go in and set this. This one happens to be in California. I've got my zone and my coordinate system code set here, so all is good there. Then this step 2 is just directly right in this same window. We're going to switch to the Transformation tab, and I'm going to check on Apply Transform Settings. So that's going to open up this window here, and what I'm trying to do here is set a reference point. So for the reference point, you don't have to know the northing and easting. If you do, that's great. You could type it in here, but if you don't know it, you can use this button right here. It will bring you into the drawing, and you can go ahead and select that point. So I'm going to snap to the end point there, and then it pulls in my northing and easting. Now the one thing that we kind of have to do manually here is our local northing and easting needs to match our grid northing and easting. So I'm just going to copy and paste like so for my grid northing and easting, and now those match up. So I'll say OK. And now I'm finally ready to use the tool. Now that's all I need to do. I don't need to set any proxy graphics, none of that. Everything's good to go. So we have this new Collaborate tab. I believe it was with version 2019 that this came about. Like I said, you have to have 19.1, and that will have the Publish Surfaces option available, as well as the BIM 360. I always forget the name of it, but we need to have that available too. So then you'll be able to see this Publish Surfaces button. So I'm going to go ahead and select that, and here is where you'll see a list of the surfaces in your drawing. So you could have multiple surfaces in here. It doesn't have to be just one at a time. I happen to only have one in here, but you can have an existing surface, multiple proposed surfaces. You can check on or off which ones you want to bring over. So I'm just going to do the one I have here. And then down here is where you're going to tell Civil 3D where to place this file. So I'm just going to go ahead and browse. And then this is where I need the desktop connector. That was the word that I was looking for. So the desktop connector is basically, it just provides you a link to BIM 360 through just your regular File Explorer. So I'm going to go to the BIM 360, and you'll have, a different set of folders here, but you'll have your folders organized for where you want to place things. And I'm going to place mine in the Shared Civil, and I'm going to place it here. Now there is one already named this in this folder because we did a little bit of practicing before. It's going to create just another version of this. I'm going to go ahead and save. Just for sake of time, we've already done it. It doesn't take too long, but just so that we don't have to wait for it to publish for this webinar, we've already done it. But I'm going to just keep going. That warning, by the way, I should have kept it up, but the warning is just telling you that a surface style that's being used it's basically going to change the way the surface style is shown. It needs to have the tin lines shown in order to not have that warning. So don't worry about it. You just say, okay, it's not going to change anything about your surface or how it's modeled. It's just going to bring it over kind of with the tin lines shown. Okay. So that's that. So from here on Peter's end, he'll be able to see in BIM 360 that that's coming over, and I'm going to turn it back over to him so he can show you that.
Thank you very much. Alrighty, so let me show my screen now. There we go. So what I'm looking at right now is the BIM 360 document management service, and I can see my project files and all the other content that I have access to. And I know that Jackie shared it into the shared folder in Civil, so I have access to it. On a real project, I wouldn't have access to the Civil Teams project folder for any working content. So I'll go in here, and I can actually see what's going on. The interesting thing is here, you notice that's version 2. It already uploaded the one she just put in there, so I can actually take a look at that. Now, great thing about this is if I wanted to, I can come in here and then start looking at the file. I can view it, get an idea of what it looks like. I can do section cuts. I can get property data off of the elements if need be, find out what's going on with there. But that's not really what I'm looking for at the moment. What I'm really looking for is, hey, this is here. Now, one of the nice things I can do, though, is find out when this is updated by subscribing to this. And a new feature that they just added is actually transmittals. What that means is that I'm not sitting here for hours waiting for something to show up or constantly checking it. And maybe Jackie gets busy after uploading it and doesn't have a chance to reach out to me. All I need to know is I've subscribed to it, and then the second that it gets uploaded, I'll actually get an email from BIM 360 telling me that there's new things. Its file's been updated. It's been uploaded. So it's helping keep us coordinated much smoother. So now that the file is actually there, I'm going to hop into Revit. All I have to do is go to my link topography. Now, this is going to be in the insert ribbon. Under massing and site, there's the topo surface, and in the process of creating that, I can always select a link. This is a different thing. So I say link topography, and what this is going to do is it's going to open up a dialog window that's going to point directly to BIM 360. So even though when she was running that tool, it gave her the opportunity to save it somewhere on her computer. We use the desktop connector that essentially maps a drive of BIM 360 locally. But this only shows me content that I have access to in the cloud. So I don't have the ability to grab a file that happens to be local or not on BIM 360. So in this case, I can see my file. Let me actually just refresh that folder. There we go. Now I see version 2. Select it, link it in, and then it's going to ask me, how do I want to manage my coordinates? Do I want to just drop it in the center of my file, or do I want to line things up with the shared coordinates of my project, with the shared coordinates from the, or not shared, but with the coordinate system from her project? So again, one of the benefits of this is not that it just handles the topo surface itself, but it helps line up the coordinates between the different disciplines, which is always one of the fun parts of the project. For the demo, because I haven't set any coordinates up, I'm just going to say center to center for the time being, and that drops it in. And because it's a little bit higher than where I'm at, I just go into 3D, and there's my topo surface. So it's now treated as a topography link. Now, some of the things that we mentioned before were the versions. We were very specific about Civil 3D 2019.1 and Revit 2019.1. That was the version that these features were added in. Now, Revit 2019.2 also added in several other abilities to this. So those abilities would be things like adding in a building pad and that reacting correctly with this, and also the ability to subregion this so I can actually start showing it with different materials. And in reality, the workflow between the two teams is really that simple. You saw what Jackie did to actually send out a specific portion or all of her surfaces. It goes to the cloud. I don't have to go to the cloud if I don't want to. I just open it up inside of Revit and say, hey, grab this, build my topo, and keep moving. One of the other nice benefits of this, though, by taking advantage of BIM 360, is that let's say I have my project, and now my project has that topography built into it. I can then synchronize this back to the cloud, so that way everything is now connected. So let's say I'm looking at the topo surface that I received from my civil team, and I have some questions, or I found something that doesn't quite work, or I need to ask them to make a change. All I need to do is go back to the cloud, and I can look at the model that I've actually shared with them, and what I can do is make a markup, or even make an issue. So in this case, I say, no, is this going to be a problem with the connection to the road? So, is it going to be a safety issue, observation issue, question issue? This one, more of a design. I'll say that road entrance. Thankfully, there is a spell check, which I really need today. There we go. And I can actually assign this to Jackie or to Jackie's company, so that way they all have the opportunity to answer this. So that's now a new issue. It's taking advantage of the BIM 360 document management backbone that we're using to funnel our content back and forth between. So we're really able to use this as a collaborative tool more so than just, an FTP site that we can share files on. So it gives us a lot more benefits than we would have otherwise. Alrighty. So anybody have any questions? Anything that you were curious about that we didn't touch on? Feel free to drop them into the questions or into the chat window. So we have one in here with regards to, is this possible with Civil 3D 2018? Unfortunately, not at the moment, no. If your 2019 is crashing, that might be something we can help with, though. Definitely reach out to our support team. Another question, if I have all services in-house, do I need to use BIM 360? For this specific workflow, yes, you would. It's more so that the tool sets actually take advantage of BIM 360 to do some of the cleanup work. If you remember when Jackie was running her demo, at the very end of it, there was a pop-up that came up and she mentioned how it cleans up and changes the surface to look triangulated. Part of the back-end work is that it tweaks the file a little bit to make sure Revit can read it and display everything accurately as it did inside of Civil 3D. So again, there's other options with sharing. We touched on a couple of them in terms of the existing workflows, but for right now, regardless of if everyone's in the same office, we would need to use BIM 360 for this. Another question, will this also be able to work with integrating InfraWorks? This specific workflow, no. However, you can integrate InfraWorks with this. If I'm actually going to pop back in here for a second. So this project that I'm looking at here, so you'll notice that I actually have a civil and infrastructure folder. That actually has InfraWorks models that are synchronized to this project. And if I'm looking at this, I can see the multiple proposals, and I can actually see my Revit model in here. If I remember where I put it. So BIM 360 does help integrate things with InfraWorks and Revit and other tools. However, what it doesn't do is it doesn't streamline the process of sending data back and forth between Revit and InfraWorks. It's a medium for viewing at the moment. But I would not be surprised if this is really the first step in new workflows and coordination tools between the civil and infrastructure teams and the other AEC design teams. Because up until now, it's been relatively basic and light. Now that BIM 360 is becoming much more of a part of the process, we're seeing it used in more and more tools. Good question. If the architect inserts a building pad in Revit, can the civil engineer import that into Civil 3D to edit the topo surface? So at the moment, this workflow is one directional, meaning that the civil engineer is pushing the data into Revit. Now, the Revit user can export out to CAD or to send information so that the civil engineer knows where that is so that they can edit and adjust the topo surface. But it's not a round trip where, and let's say the architect in Revit makes a change and then it updates the topo surface on the civil engineer. It doesn't go that direction where it updates it directly like a link. But we can send them CAD files or IFC exports out of Revit that they can then use to update their content. Maybe in the next version. Okay, so while we get a couple more questions in there, just to let everybody know, this webinar was put out specifically for Civil 3D and Revit workflows, focusing on that new tool. We actually have a couple of other webinars coming up soon. So next one up is March 5th. That's going to be on template creation in Revit Part 3. Part 1 and 2 are also available on our YouTube channel. So if you missed those or you wanted to revisit them, that'll be there. This webinar will actually be up there shortly as well. After that, we have Enscape tips and tricks. Another question coming up. This will be available for 2020 version, correct? I can't say anything yes or no with regards to the upcoming software, probably in the next 2 months, but my expectation would be that they're not going to add something in on the previous version and not have it on the next one. But again, I can't say yay or nay on anything until it's close to being released when they allow us to say yay or nay. Another question here. Does the exported surface update like an XREF? Yes, it does. That's actually one of the main benefits of this. So I'm going to hop back into Revit for a second. So if I click on this file, so when Jackie was going through her process, one of the things she mentioned is that we actually already did this once. And when she actually sent that out, it updated the version that was in the cloud. So when I showed you the view in BIM 360 Document Management, you saw it was version 2. In this case, all I would need to do is go into my Insert ribbon, Manage Links, and now I have a topography. So I just click on that and say Reload. And if the file in the cloud has been updated, this will pull down those updates and it will actually modify and update the topo surface that I created from the file she sent me. That's one of the main benefits of this and how smooth the process is to start with. And then after that point, it's exceedingly smooth to update and make sure that we're coordinated.
I should mention, Peter, that you do have to, if there are changes to the surface in Civil 3D, you do have to publish it again. It's not just an automatic thing. You have to publish it and push it up to BIM 360, but still, it's just a quick step to do.
And if you're ever curious about, okay, well, what actually changed between those versions, I can always come over here and actually ask BIM 360 to show me those changes. That's one of the features that is available between CAD, PDF, Revit. So this makes it easier to actually understand the changes, and then it also makes it easier to put all those changes into my documents and my workflow. Another question here. What about bringing the Revit file into Civil 3D? At the moment, with this version of this workflow, it's really one directional. It's more about pulling the Civil 3D data into Revit and making the process of updating it streamlined. At the moment, the process of going from Revit back into Civil 3D, that's still using the existing workflows, whether I'm using IFC or I'm exporting out to CAD. Those are the two typical ways that we see that, but it's still that way. Yeah, I would expect we'd see some updates to that soon, though. Alrighty. Everybody, I'd like to say thank you very much for attending. I really appreciate all the questions and interactivity. That was great. Hopefully this information was useful for you. If you have suggestions for future topics or things that you're curious about you think would make a great webinar, always feel free to reach out to us. You can always email team@microdesk.com for that. I mentioned the other webinars that we have in the past have been recorded. They're on our YouTube channel. This video will actually be on our YouTube channel shortly as well. But otherwise, thank you very much for attending. We appreciate your time and have a great day. Thank you.